The story of the inner mirror. Morning found her where the last story left her. In the hush of the golden forest, hand over heart, a small steady flame waking in her chest. The choice had been made, quietly, irrevocably. I choose to remember. And memory like dawn had answered. Light moved through the trees, the way breath moves through a calm body, slow even, certain. Dew beaded on fern tips like tiny stars that had fallen to rest. Somewhere a river spoke in a voice as old as time, saying only what rivers ever say, keep going. She stood, not as someone saved by a miracle, but as someone who had finally stopped running from herself. The forest seemed to know, the trunks aligned like pillars of a forgotten temple. Birds held a respectful silence. Even the wind waited, poised at the edge of her next step. She felt the presence beside her, not imposing, not dramatic, simply there, the way a mountain is, there even when the clouds cover it. The elder's nearness was an atmosphere more than a figure, a soft gravity drawing her toward the part of herself that had always watched and never wavered. A narrow path opened where there had been none, not carved by feet but by intention. The ground glittered with pale mica, tiny mirrors underfoot catching flecks of the sun. With each breath, something unlatched inside her ribs. With each exhale, old winter seemed to lift. The path curved between two great oaks whose roots braided together like hands remembering how to hold. Beyond them, the forest light cooled, staining the air with a silver hue as if she had stepped beneath water. The familiar gold receded behind her like a childhood room framed in a doorway. Ahead, a clearing waited, a circle of smooth stone ringed by birch and ash, white trunks gleaming like bone, leaves whispering in syllables she almost understood. At the clearing's heart lay a surface so still she mistook it for polished rock. Only when a breeze passed did it move. Just a ripple, just enough to prove it was not stone at all, but water held in perfect poise. It did not reflect the sky above. It reflected her, as if it had been laid here for that single purpose. Not a pond, not a pool, a mirror. She approached and the glass of water deepened. Her face did not meet her, her life did. The years she had worn like a heavy coat, the words she had swallowed until they dissolved into ache. The choices made from fear and called wisdom, the smiles that closed over empty places, the nights when she learned how to leave her own body just to make it through until morning. It was all there, not accusing, not shaming, just present, like weather recorded without comment. There was a time she would have turned away. There was a time she would have thrown a stone to break the surface and pretend the fragments were the fault of water. Today she did not move. The small flame in her chest did not flicker. She had come to stand before exactly this. The surroundings grew quiet enough to hear soft truths. Light thinned into a hush, and hush turned into a listening that did not come from ears. A single thought rose, not from the mind, but from somewhere older. To remember your light, you must first see what casts your shadow. The mirror water trembled, not with wind, but with recognition. The surface film loosened and parted into rings, and within those rings other surfaces appeared. Ovals and panes and flawless plates of night-colored glass, gathering where the pool should have been. Not floating, not sunk, present the way a doorway is present, an absence shaped for passage. She understood without being told. In life, there are houses with doors and rooms and clocks to govern them. In the soul, there are other houses, built from moments. This was such a house, the house of mirrors, and every pane she saw was a held breath, a sealed hour, a version of her waiting in a room where time had stopped. The forest still existed, but its edges had softened, as if painted with a brush dipped in mercury. Birch trunks lengthened into pale pillars. The leaves turned to a ceiling of slow green flames. The circle of stone she stood upon felt like the center of an instrument that could be tuned by will alone. When she inhaled, the mirrors brightened. When she exhaled, they drew nearer. Her breath had become a key. A memory touched her shoulder lightly as a moth. The moment, years ago, when she learned it was safer to make herself smaller than a room, smaller than a chair, smaller than a thought. Another followed, colder, of the day she realized her laughter could be used against her. And so she set it down, like a cup she could no longer risk lifting. Then the season she mistook numbness for strength and locked the door on all the rooms that made her cry. The mirrors quickened. Within their depths, shadows changed into people. Not strangers, not ghosts. Familiar in a way that made the throat ache. She glanced backward once and saw the gold-lit path still there, faithful as a promised friend. Light does not abandon, it waits. With that knowledge like a cloak around her shoulders, she faced forward again. One mirror pulsed faintly, as if a small hand had pressed against its other side. Another shivered with the tightness of a swallowed shout. A third fogged and cleared, like the breath of someone who had run too far to remember stopping. She did not choose among them. She let the right one choose her. The surface nearest her heart warmed and widened, not outward, but inward, as if space itself made room. A shape gathered, not advancing, simply forming, the way a melody gathers inside a violin before the bow has touched the string. Something in her chest tightened and softened at once. She knew the feeling. It had a name older than language. It was the sensation you have when you turn toward the door you once closed on yourself and place your hand upon the handle. The first mirror accepted her touch without breaking. Cold met skin, then cold learned how to be gentle. The glass yielded like a membrane between worlds, and the room inside opened. It was not a room a builder would recognize. It was a time held safe. Soft light pooled on a floor that was not wood and not stone, but something of both, blonde and warm, like sun pinned down for a while to rest. A window brightened the air with late afternoon, perpetual and kind. On a small rug sat a girl so intent on drawing that the world could have tilted and she would not have noticed. Her hair fell forward in a curtain, her tongue pressed to the corner of her mouth the way it does when hands are busy with wonder. Crayons lay everywhere like fallen petals. The picture unfolded beneath her. Houses with friendly windows, a sun with long arms, a river that learned how to hold boats and clouds at the same time. The room smelled faintly of paper and something sweet and clean, a scent she could not name but which the body knew as safety. The woman's knees remembered how to bend. She crouched, she returned, to the level where small worlds are built. The girl did not startle. Why would she? Recognition runs deeper than years. A mothering warmth rose in the woman. The kind of warmth that has waited its whole life for something to warm. "Hello," she said, though the word happened in the heart and not in the mouth. The girl lifted her face. Her eyes were not large like in stories. They were exact, clear, honest as water that has never had to lie about what it holds. She regarded the woman with the precise calm children possess when they have endured more than they were given words to fit around it. "I thought you might never come back," said the look on the girl's face, though no sound disturbed the peace. The woman's vision blurred for a moment and then steadied. There was a temptation to apologize, to pour adult speech over the small cathedral of this silence. She did not. Instead, she allowed the apology to be a warmth she sent without words, a blanket laid over small shoulders that had learned to live weather they could not control. Time, if that is still what to call it, adjusted itself politely and waited in the hall. The room welcomed their attention like soil welcomes rain. The girl went back to her drawing, not dismissing the woman, but inviting her to witness the sacred work of being fully present with a crayon. The woman watched the boat grow an extra mast, watched the sun grow one more arm simply because joy had asked for it, watched the river learn a bend that made the boat's journey more interesting, but not more dangerous. A thread lifted in the space between them, so fine it could have been a hair, so strong it could have been a bridge. On that thread traveled a truth as light as breath. I never needed you to explain why you left. I needed you to come back. Somewhere outside the room the forest breathed. Somewhere beyond the forest, a life she would return to waited with its dishes and deadlines and doors. Here, in this small time, she remembered what no lecture had been able to teach, that the parts of us left behind do not require grand speeches to trust again. They require presence. They require the willingness to sit on a floor and let crayons decide what happens next. She did not reach to touch the child. She let touch be a decision made by the one who had once been told she did not get to choose. After a while, a measure not counted by clocks, the small hand found the large one. It was not dramatic, it was an agreement. Skin to skin, self to self, the long circuit closed. Warmth traveled up her arm and settled in her chest where the small, steady flame lived. The flame changed color, not brighter, not larger, truer. The girl exhaled, a tiny sound, but in that exhale, 1,000 held breaths elsewhere in the body found permission to leave. The drawing added one more detail, a path from the little painted house to the river's edge. Not straight, not crooked, curious. She knew then that no one would come into this room to rescue the child. There had never been a rescuer. There had been a door and hands capable of turning handles, and the day when fear relaxed its jaw enough to let a key fall out. She was the one who had come. She was enough. The room did not vanish. Stories of magic like to vanish rooms when the lesson is learned. This was not a story of vanishing. This was a story of returning. The room receded the way a heartbeat recedes into a body, not gone, integrated. The mirror's membrane met her palm again, this time not cold at all. On the other side, the forest waited in its patient silver. She stepped back onto the circle of stone, thinner and more complete at once, emptied of a weight she had carried so long she'd mistaken it for bone. The mirrors around her shifted, acknowledging a change the way a flock of birds adjusts its shape mid-flight. Somewhere a pain that had vibrated with swallowed shouts quieted, not silenced, but listening. She did not need to ask what came next. The House of Mirrors is courteous. It shows you doors in the order your heart can bear to open them. Another surface deepened nearby, dark as a well where unspoken words go to practice being thunder. It did not threaten her. It had been built to protect her when protection had only one shape, steel. She stood a while, not to gather courage, but to honor the courage already gathered in the long years it had taken to reach this place. Wind combed the birch leaves into a soft applause. She let the sound pass through her like a blessing. Somewhere in her body an old brace unclasped. Somewhere in her thoughts a sentence ended without needing a period. When she faced the next mirror, it did not wait for ceremony. The world tilted by the smallest degree, the way you tilt a picture frame until it hangs true, and the surface learned how to open. She did not know what she would meet inside. She did not need to know. The light at her heart had grown fluent enough to translate on arrival. And so the story continued, not forward or backward, but deeper. The seeker crossing thresholds of herself, the forest keeping watch, the House of Mirrors offering room after room until wholeness was no longer a concept, but a geography lived from the inside. Far away and very near, the path she had taken into this clearing held its line of gold like a promise she could keep. Far away and very near, the presence beside her remained, not instructing, not intruding, simply accompanying, the way truth accompanies a person who has decided at last to tell it. Some journeys are measured in miles. This one was measured in rooms welcomed home. She stood before the mirror that had chosen her, its surface still as moonlit glass, its edges pulsing with a gentle light, not demanding entry, but inviting it. The air around her held a hush so complete that even her heartbeat seemed to listen. Something within her, a knowing older than fear, softened. And as it did, the mirror began to open. Not outward, not like a door on hinges, but inward, like water parting to receive a returning river. The world around her dissolved into light and quiet colors. Shapes formed slowly, as though memory itself were deciding what to reveal. And then, there it was, a small room, cozy golden, alive not with grandeur but with tenderness. Soft rugs, a low table, sunlight that had forgotten how to be harsh. And at the center of it all, a girl. She was no more than 7, kneeling on the floor, completely engrossed in drawing a world where trees had faces and rivers curled protectively around homes. Her hair fell over her shoulders in perfect softness. Her small hand moved with certainty, as though every line she placed was a promise. She did not look up, but the air stirred, as if she knew someone had arrived. The woman stood still, breath caught somewhere between awe and ache. There she was, not a memory, not an idea, but herself, untouched by time, still whole, still believing in magic because no one had yet taught her to fear it. The child did not startle or hide. She simply paused, the crayon hovering midair. Slowly, she lifted her face, and in that moment the room did not change, but the woman did. Those eyes, clear as spring water, innocent, not because they had never known pain, but because they had never agreed to carry it alone. There was no anger there, no blame, only one question, spoken without words, but felt through the heart like a bell ringing across lifetimes. Did you forget me? A tightness rose in the woman's throat. For years, she had believed her suffering came from what happened to her. Now she could see a deeper truth. It came from all the parts of herself she had abandoned in order to survive it. The girl rose quietly, crayon still in hand, and stepped forward. She stood only inches away, close enough that the woman could feel the delicate pulse of a heartbeat that had once been her own. The girl tilted her head the way a bird does when listening to a whisper meant only for its wings. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with remembrance. The woman felt everything at once. The moment she first learned silence could be safer than truth. The day she stopped asking to be seen because it hurt too much when no one looked. The exact breath where she traded wonder for vigilance. The child knew all of it, not from reports or memories, but because she lived through it with her. And still she stood with open hands, not accusing, not pleading, just waiting to be welcomed home. The air between them glowed faintly, as though the space itself was becoming a bridge. The woman reached out slowly, not with desperation but reverence, and placed a hand over her heart. In the child's presence, the flame in her chest flickered, not weaker, but truer. Like a lantern remembering its original fire. The child did not step forward. She didn't need to. Because the moment the woman opened her heart, the girl stepped inside. A return, not a merging. A remembering, not a possession. Warmth flooded her body in waves so gentle, they felt like love itself had hands. And for the first time in her life, she understood. She had not come here to fix herself. She had come here to welcome herself home. Warmth flowed through her like a tide returning to shore after lifetimes spent retreating. It wasn't dramatic, it was sacred, subtle, the kind of peace that doesn't shout, "You are healed," but quietly reminds you, you were never unworthy of wholeness. The child had not come to be saved. She had come to be remembered. And now she was no longer standing in front of the woman. She was within her. Not as a memory trapped in time, but as a living presence restored. A feeling bloomed in the woman's chest, small at first, like the first green sprout pushing through winter soil. Then stronger, fuller, alive. It was wonder. Not the naive wonder of not yet knowing pain, but the holy wonder of one who has walked through darkness and still chooses to see light. She understood. Healing is not about becoming who you were before the hurt. It is about reclaiming the parts of you that learned how to love because of it. As this truth settled in her bones, the room around her began to fade. Not vanish, but dissolve into her being, like the last notes of a lullaby drifting back into silence after fulfilling its purpose. The mirror's surface welcomed her again. She stepped back into the clearing, not alone, but accompanied by a presence she now carried within her forever. The birch leaves shimmered with approval, as though the forest itself had held its breath and could now exhale in relief. There was no need for applause. Wholeness has always been quiet. For a moment she simply stood there, hand still over heart, feeling the presence of the child within her chest. She saw life differently now, not as something she had to survive, but as something she was now ready to live. Somewhere in the distance, a soft chime rang out, not from a bell, but from the mirrors themselves. A new surface began to glow, this one darker, forged of shadow and steel. It pulsed not with innocence, but with power held back. A fragment not abandoned like the child, but silenced, like a storm taught to stay quiet in a bottle. The air thickened with anticipation. She took a breath, the kind of breath that marks a turning point in a life. She had reclaimed her innocence. Now she would have to reclaim her strength. The forest shifted. Shadows lengthened, not in menace, but in invitation. For the next mirror did not hold a child. It held a warrior. The morning light spilled softly through the forest canopy as Alara followed the winding path. The air carried a stillness that felt alive, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting. She had never traveled this far from her village before. Though the path ahead was unfamiliar, something within her felt guided, as though her steps were being gently placed for her. In the distance, the sound of running water called to her. She followed it until the trees opened, revealing a river unlike any she'd ever seen. The water shimmered, not the color of silver or blue, but of pure light, as if starlight had fallen into liquid form. Alara stepped toward the bank. As she did, the air seemed to warm around her. The elder appeared across the water, not walking, not arriving, but emerging as if he had always been there, waiting for her arrival. "Why does the water glow?" Ilara asked quietly, unable to look away. The elder's voice was soft, but it seemed to echo through the trees and through her own heartbeat. "This river reflects not what is above," he said, "but what lives within. It is the mirror of the inner world." Ilara stepped closer. As she looked into the glowing surface, she expected to see her face. But she did not. She saw moments, fleeting, like drifting feathers. Her childhood laughter, her first heartbreak, the day she stopped believing in magic, the night she whispered to the sky that she felt alone. Each memory shimmered and faded into the next, like pages turning of their own accord. "I thought I left these behind," she said, barely able to speak. The elder stepped onto the water. Light rippled beneath his feet, holding him. "What you push away," he said, "does not disappear. It waits. Not to haunt you, but to return you to yourself." Ilara watched as the water shifted again. Now she saw not memories from her past, but possible futures. One path showed her dim and small, living a life that was safe but silent. Another showed her radiant, unafraid, surrounded not by certainty, but by purpose. Her heart ached, not from fear, but from recognition. "The water is showing me what I must choose," she whispered. The elder nodded. "You were taught to chase the world outside of you, but here at the River of Mirrors, you are asked to return. Your power does not come from becoming something new. It comes from remembering what you already are." A breeze swept across the water, and the reflections faded, returning the river to its luminous stillness. Ilara placed her hand over her heart. For the first time, the weight she carried did not feel like a burden, but like a key. The elder's eyes shone with ancient warmth. "When the heart begins to remember," he said gently, "the world begins to change around it." Ilara stepped forward, not onto the water, but toward herself. And in that moment, the sound of the river seemed to speak, not in words, but in knowing. "This is the turning point," the river said. "This is where the seeker begins to awaken." Segment 3. The Mirror of Truth. The clearing held its breath, as if waiting for a word the world had not heard in a very long time. A hush moved through the birches. Light gathered itself into a quiet halo around the stones. Ahead, a new mirror eased forward from the air. Oval, tall, rimmed with no metal, no wood, only a soft glow as if dawn had learned to hold a shape. She felt its presence before she saw its surface. It was not cold like glass, not bright like water. It was receptive, a living stillness, the kind of silence that listens you back into yourself. She stood before it and, as always, expected to see a face. But the mirror did not offer a picture. At first, it offered weight. The weight of years spent proving, performing, apologizing for existing too brightly, too softly, too differently. The weight of, "I'll be enough when," that had stretched like a wire across every season of her life. She knew that wire well. She had balanced on it so long her feet had forgotten the ground. A pulse of light moved through the mirror, and the first images rose, simple as truth, sharp as winter. She saw herself as a child, standing at the edge of a room of grown-ups, holding a drawing she loved with her whole heart. "Not now," someone said without looking. The child folded the drawing in half, then again, smaller and smaller until it fit in the pocket where wonder goes to sleep. She saw herself as a teenager, laughing at her own ideas before anyone else could, a shield made of jokes. People clapped for her wit. No one noticed she was using it to hide. She saw herself as an adult, working past tired into numb, smiling past no into illness, saying, "It's fine." So often the words lost their meaning and became a script the body read without her. The mirror did not accuse. It recorded. Then it changed. The images slowed and widened until they stopped being scenes and became a single presence. A dim shape behind everything she did, like a shadow cast by an unseen light. When she looked closer, she realized it wasn't a shadow at all. It was a belief, so constant she had mistaken it for reality. "I am not enough." 3 words. Small as seeds, strong as chains. She wanted to look away, and for a moment she did, eyes to the trees, to the sky, to the kind, familiar ground. But the mirror's silence was patient. It did not pull her back. It welcomed her return when she was ready. And because she had come too far to keep leaving herself, she turned to face it again. "I thought suffering meant I was weak," she whispered to no one, and to the whole forest at once. I thought it meant there was something wrong with me. The mirror deepened, its surface gathering light into form. A soft figure approached from within, neither stranger nor twin, but something older and truer. Not a perfect version, not a performance, a presence. The shape of who she had always been beneath the wire, beneath the scripts, beneath the weather of other people's voices. It stood near the glass, the way dawn stands near the horizon, about to become itself. You, she breathed. Not you as in someone else. You as in me, before the forgetting. The presence raised a hand, and the mirror responded, filling with images again, but different now. Not memories of collapse, but memories of evidence. The time she stayed kind when cruelty would have been easier. The morning she got up when getting up felt impossible. The day she told the truth even though shaking. The moment she listened to a friend so completely that the friend found words they didn't know they had. The quiet nights she learned how to cradle her own pain when no one else saw it. Small acts, unseen victories, the kind the world forgets to count. The mirror counted them. With every instance, a wire across her life loosened. With every instance, another thread of not enough unraveled, revealing something that had been there all along, hidden beneath the woven lie. I am. Not I am when, not I am if, just I am, and it was enough to light the whole clearing. The presence in the mirror came closer until the glass held nothing but eyes. Not saintly eyes, not perfect, human and holy at once. They did not plead to be believed. They invited her to remember, and then the mirror did what mirrors almost never do. It spoke without words, not with sentences, but with a knowing that unfurled like a banner. Your life did not prove you were unworthy. Your life proved you were faithful to a story you were taught. And if you were faithful to a lesser story, imagine what your life becomes when you are faithful to the truth. Her breath left and returned as a different thing. She felt the place in her chest where worth had been negotiated like a contract, tight, conditional, forever at risk of being revoked. That place softened, not all at once, enough to let light in. Then what is the truth? She asked, tears gentle as rain she didn't need to hide. The mirror answered by changing again. It became a thread, a single golden strand extending from its surface to her heart. She touched it with a reverence usually reserved for altars, but this was an altar. The oldest one, the kind you carry in your ribs. As her fingers met the thread, she felt it hum, not with noise, with recognition. Memory moved down the line like warmth through winter hands. The truth is not a sentence to memorize. The truth is a relationship to remember. The relationship between breath and body, between thought and emotion, between attention and reality, between your I am and the life that echoes it. She saw it then, the architecture beneath existence. How every I am, she whispered, shaped her posture toward the world. How every posture invited a certain kind of day. How days became weeks, became years, became identity. How identity, left unexamined, hardened into fate. But fate, she realized with a quiet shock, was soft clay in the presence of truth. You are not broken, you are becoming honest. The golden thread brightened, then multiplied. One strand becoming many, running from her heart into the mirror and out again into the forest, lacing through trees, stones, sky, the unseen curve of the river, the birds holding their patient watch. It wove a pattern so intricate and obvious she almost laughed, everything connected, everything speaking, everything returning her to her center when she chose to listen. A breeze lifted, leaves answered. The ground steadied her weight with a tenderness she had never noticed. How had she not known the world was this alive? Because not enough is loud, and truth is quiet until you turn down what drowns it. She looked back at the mirror, and it offered one last lesson, simple enough for a child, deep enough for a lifetime. Whatever follows I am becomes your prayer. Say it with care, say it with love. Say it like you are speaking to the universe and a child at the same time. Because you are. She closed her eyes. Not to escape, to choose. I am worthy of being here. I am learning to love myself as I am. I am safe to take up space. I am ready to live from truth. With each declaration, the thread hummed, the forest brightened, and the mirror softened. It's work done for now. When she opened her eyes, she didn't need the reflection to show her who she was. She could feel it, like warmth settling, like a name returning to the mouth it belongs to. She placed her hand over her heart, not as a pledge or a performance, but as a hello. The kind you give to someone you've missed for far too long. Thank you, she said, not to the glass, not to the trees, to herself, for enduring, for listening, for returning. The mirror withdrew into the air the way dawn withdraws into day. Nothing lost, everything integrated. The clearing exhaled. Somewhere, the river laughed softly, the sound a promise. More will be shown when you are ready to see it. She stood taller without trying. The wire across her life was gone. In its place, a path, not straight, not predictable, alive. It led toward another mirror at the far edge of the circle. This one held a darker hue, not of fear but of power contained. The kind of power that comes from telling the truth after a lifetime of silence. The kind of power that refuses to burn the world down and instead learns how to warm it. She knew which fragment waited there. Not the child, she had returned. This was the one who had guarded the gates when no one else would. The one who had swallowed fire until it learned to sleep. The warrior. Before she took the first step toward that next door, she spoke one more truth into the listening air, so the world could hear the change and tune itself to it. I am enough, even while becoming. The forest answered with light. The ground answered with steadiness. Somewhere, the elder's presence answered by simply being near. The way the horizon is near when you are walking toward it. To continue remembering, Ilara stepped forward, the cosmic mirror stretching endlessly before her like a lake made of light. She did not see her face in the surface this time. Instead, the mirror flickered, and the light began to shape itself into a figure, a woman made of shifting shadow and starlight. Her eyes were not full of anger, as Ilara expected, but of exhaustion. There was pain there, yes, but also fierce protectiveness, like a flame that refused to go out. Ilara froze. The figure mirrored her every breath, every tremor of the heart. Though they stood apart, Ilara felt the ache of the figure's chest, as if it were her own heartbeat echoing back at her across time. I don't understand, Ilara whispered. The air shimmered with presence, and though no words were spoken aloud, truth moved through her like a current. This was not an enemy. This was not a demon she needed to fight. It was a memory of herself, frozen in time, still trying to protect her from a world that once felt unbearable. The figure lifted her hand, and Ilara felt a wave of emotion ripple through the mirror. Loneliness, fear. The moment she first stopped believing she was worthy of love. The memory was not seen, it was felt. She saw herself as a child, holding back tears so the world wouldn't see her pain. She saw the day she decided that being small was safer than being seen. Ilara's knees weakened. You were trying to keep me safe, she said, tears rising in her eyes. The shimmering figure nodded with emotion that barely disturbed the air. There was no malice in her, only devotion. She had wrapped Ilara in shadow, not to hide her truth, but to protect it. You were never the prison, Ilara breathed. You were the shield. As the words left her lips, the mirror glowed brighter, and the figure stepped closer, not threatening, inviting. The ripple of energy between them softened. Ilara placed her hand over her heart, and the reflection placed her hand in the same place. A pulse moved through the mirror. Light burst outward in soft waves, and the reflection was no longer separate. It merged into Ilara, dissolving into her as warm golden light that flowed through her veins and filled the spaces that once felt empty. Ilara gasped, not in fear but in relief. The heaviness in her chest lifted. The air around her vibrated with a new softness. She had not conquered a shadow. She had integrated a truth. Only then did the elder appear beside her, not arriving, but simply becoming visible, as if he had been there all along. Healing, he said gently, is not the act of defeating your shadows. It is the act of welcoming them home. Ilara looked at the mirror once more. This time, there was no flicker, no distortion. When she saw her reflection, she saw both shadow and light, and realized they were never separate. They were the same song, playing in different notes. Her power had not been lost. It had only been waiting for this moment of return. And as the cosmic mirror shimmered softly beneath her feet, Ilara understood. The journey was not about becoming more. It was about remembering she had always been enough. A gentle hush fell across the mirror realm, as though every star had paused its ancient movement to listen. The air around Alara shimmered, alive with unseen breath. Beneath her feet, the luminous surface began to pulse. Not erratically, not as a warning, but with a slow and steady rhythm. It was a heartbeat, yet it did not belong to her alone. It was vaster, older, echoing through the very fabric of the realm. Alara pressed her hand over her heart and felt it. The rhythm within her chest was not separate from the pulse beneath her. They were moving together, perfectly synchronized. Each beat was a bridge, each breath a thread of light connecting her to something far beyond the edges of any world she had ever known. The elder stood beside her, his presence calm as dawn. He did not speak, he did not need to. The mirror itself had become the teacher now. A luminous current rose from the surface, curling like a river of gold around her ankles, rising gently along her body with the softness of a long-forgotten embrace. Alara did not flinch. She closed her eyes and allowed it to move through her. Every place within her that had once felt cold began to warm. Every abandoned part of her heart began to stir, as if waking from a long sleep. Memories flickered, not of this life alone, but of lives beyond counting. She saw herself standing in ancient temples of starlight, holding bowls of flame that burned with no smoke. She saw herself laughing beneath twin suns in a world where no one had ever forgotten their origins. She saw the moment she chose this life, not as punishment, but as path, a sacred journey into forgetfulness, for the purpose of remembering. Tears welled behind her closed eyes, not from sadness, but from recognition. The warmth in her heart grew brighter, spreading through her chest like dawn spilling across mountains. She gasped softly, for it was not just light she felt, it was life. Endless, eternal, ever-present life. When she opened her eyes, the realm around her had transformed. The stars above had gathered into the pattern of a great golden spiral, and the mirror beneath her feet glowed with radiant light as though reflecting an inner fire. At that moment, the elder placed his hand over his own heart. The gesture was simple, but its meaning rang through the realm like a bell. You were never disconnected. You only fell asleep. Now you begin to wake, Alara whispered, barely audible. This light, it was always within me. The elder nodded gently. The mirror pulsed in agreement. The air itself seemed to exhale. The fire within her heart was not a flame. It did not burn, it warmed. It remembered, it loved. And as that light settled into her being, Alara felt something she had not known in many years, maybe in many lifetimes. She felt home. The warmth in Alara's heart still glowed softly, a pulse of golden light radiating outward through her chest. But then, without warning, the realm around her began to shift. The stars above dimmed slightly, their light fading into indigo. The mirror beneath her feet rippled, not with light now, but with a soft shadow, like a memory trying to resurface. Alara's breath caught, the warmth within her flickered. Out of the mist across the mirror, a figure appeared. Not solid, not clear, but shifting like a memory made of breath. It walked toward her slowly, every step echoing faintly as if the realm itself remembered this presence well. Alara's first instinct was not fear, it was recognition. She knew this presence. Not from this life alone, but from countless moments when she had doubted her own light. Moments when she had whispered, "What if none of this is real? What if I am not enough?" The figure stopped a short distance from her. Its face was not cruel but weary, made of the same shadow she had once carried within. It spoke, not with a voice, but with a feeling that pressed gently into her heart. This light you feel, it will fade. You cannot hold it. You will fall again. Alara felt a tremor run through her body. Her heart fire dimmed slightly, the warmth flickered beneath her skin. "What if I am imagining all of this?" she whispered. Her voice sounded small in the vastness of the mirror realm. The elder stood silent beside her, offering no answer. He did not interfere. This was not a lesson that could be taught through guidance. It had to be chosen. The figure of doubt took another step forward. The mirror beneath it darkened, showing Alara flashes of her past. Nights she cried alone, days she felt invisible, moments she almost gave up on herself. Each memory rose like mist surrounding her. "You have failed before," the presence murmured. "You will fail again." Alara's knees weakened. She pressed her hand against her heart, searching for the warmth. For a moment, she feared it had gone. Then she felt it, a faint glow buried deep. A memory not of pain, but of truth. A moment when she had stood in silence and felt the presence of something greater. A moment when she had laughed from her soul. A moment when she had looked at the stars and remembered. She took a breath, slow, steady. "I do not need certainty," she said quietly. "I only need willingness," the figure hesitated. Ilara continued, her voice growing stronger. "Doubt is not here to stop me. It is here to ask me if I truly choose this path." The mirror beneath her feet began to glow again. The shadowy figure flickered, as if light were dissolving its form from the inside. "I do not reject you," she said to the figure. "You were the voice that tried to protect me from disappointment. But I am ready now. You do not need to guard me anymore." The figure's expression shifted, no longer sorrowful, but peaceful. With a final shimmer, it dissolved into golden mist, merging into the mirror's light like a blessing returned to the source. The stars brightened once more. The warmth in Ilara's chest ignited gently, more stable than before. The elder turned to her, eyes shining. "True awakening," he said softly, "is not the absence of doubt. It is the decision to move forward, even while doubt stands beside you." Ilara breathed deeply. This time, the heartbeat she heard was not just within her, it echoed across the whole realm. And she realized she had passed her first threshold. The mirror beneath Ilara's feet began to glow more deeply, as if something ancient beneath its surface had awakened. The stars above shifted position, aligning themselves into a great spiral, each one pulsing gently, as though speaking in a language too old for words. Suddenly, the surface of the mirror parted. It did not break or shatter. It opened, like a doorway of starlit water, revealing a vastness beyond. Ilara stepped forward, eyes wide. What she saw was not a single world, but many. Realms stretched out before her in layers of light and shadow. Some shone brightly, alive with remembrance. Others lay dim and gray, their skies heavy, their people moving as though asleep, unaware of the light flickering faintly within their own hearts. She could feel their longing, like distant heartbeats crying out across space. "We have forgotten who we are." Her breath caught, the warmth in her chest pulsed in response. A golden pathway emerged from the mirror, winding gently outward through the expanse, suspended in the air like a bridge woven of living light. It did not force her. It did not command. It simply called. The elder stood beside her. Though his expression was calm, there was a great power in his gaze. It felt as though the stars themselves were listening through him. "Ilara," he said softly, "the light that awakened within you is not just for your healing. It is a key, a torch in a world that has dimmed. There are many who walk beneath shadowed skies, believing their light has been lost. But it waits, just as yours did, to be remembered." Ilara looked out at the dim realms. She felt their pain, not as a burden, but as a profound kinship. They were not broken, they were simply asleep. Her voice trembled. "Why me?" The elder smiled, not with pride, but with recognition. "It was never about being chosen," he said. "You answered. Every soul hears the call. Few are willing to awaken." As he spoke, currents of golden mist rose along the pathway, swirling like gentle winds of memory. And then Ilara heard it, not with her ears, but with her heart. A song. Ancient, wordless, familiar, like the echo of a lullaby sung before time began. It was not singing to her. It was singing through her. It was the song of remembering. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of absolute remembrance. She knew, without knowing how, that she had walked this path before, not in this form, but in many. She had carried light through quiet lives and forgotten it through others. Each time, the song had called her back, and now it was calling again. The elder's voice was almost a whisper. What lies beyond this mirror is not a journey of distance, but of destiny. You will walk into worlds where the light sleeps. You will not force it awake. You will stand and remember until remembrance spreads like dawn. Ilara placed a hand over her heart. The warmth of the heart fire grew stronger, lighting the space around her. The pathway glowed brighter, as though responding to her choice before she had even spoken it aloud. "I am ready," she said. And in that moment, the mirror realm exhaled, as though the stars themselves had been holding their breath, waiting for these words to be spoken. Ilara stepped forward, and the pathway dissolved beneath her feet, replaced by solid earth. But this land did not hum with life the way the mirror realm had. The air felt heavy, as though a great storm had passed long ago, but the sky had forgotten how to clear. She stood at the edge of a quiet village made of stone and glass, where people moved slowly through narrow streets. No one looked up. Each person walked as though carrying an invisible weight across their shoulders, their hearts dimmed beneath layers of unspoken weariness. The sky above was neither day nor night. It glowed faintly with a muted silver, neither dark enough to rest beneath nor bright enough to awaken to. Alara felt the pulse of her heart fire flicker gently, responding to the energy of the land. It did not dim, but it softened, as though choosing to move gently with great care. The elder stepped beside her. Though his presence was quiet, it felt like the single clear tone in a world of muffled echoes. "Where is this place?" Alara asked softly. "This is the realm where many souls dwell when they forget their own light," the elder replied. "They do not know they are asleep. They believe this muted existence is all there is." As Alara watched, a woman passed by them. Her eyes were distant, as though looking inward at a worry that never ended. A faint shimmer glowed in the center of her chest, a light desperately trying to break through. But every time it flickered, the woman clutched her chest and hurried on, as though afraid of the warmth she felt. Alara's heart ached. "They don't see it," she whispered. "They don't see their own light." The elder nodded. "In this realm, forgetting is not forced. It is chosen through years of turning away from inner truth. They seek safety in shadow because it is familiar." Alara watched a group of people gathered in a square, their faces illuminated by tall screens of flickering light. The images changed rapidly, fear, anger, longing, but none of them looked away. They did not speak to one another. They only reacted silently as the flickering glow reflected in their eyes. Alara felt the stirring of sorrow, but beneath it she felt something else, a rising strength. The warmth in her chest grew steady. "They are not lost," she said. "They are remembering slowly." The elder looked at her with quiet pride. "Yes, they do not need saving. They need reminding. And the reminder must first be lived, not spoken." Alara bowed her head, understanding. She closed her eyes and placed her hand over her heart. The light within her glowed, not as a burst, but as a gentle radiance. When she opened her eyes, she saw it. A soft ripple of golden light spreading outward from her, barely visible, but real. The people around her did not turn. They did not suddenly awaken, but a few paused in their steps. One looked toward the sky. Another placed her hand over her own heart, as if feeling something for the first time in a long while. The elder's voice was barely above a whisper. "The world does not change when you fight its shadows. It changes when you embody the light it has forgotten." Alara took a breath, not to change the realm, but to meet it. And with that breath, the realm itself seemed to tremble with the memory of dawn. Alara walked through the quiet square, her steps gentle, each one guided not by urgency, but by the steady rhythm of the light within her chest. The people moved around her in muted silence, eyes downcast, expressions distant, as if they were wandering through a dream they no longer remembered entering. But then, something shifted. A soft pulse moved through the air, like the echo of a bell that no one had struck. Alara paused. Across the square, a figure stopped walking. A young woman stood in the center of the path, her hand hovering over her heart, as though surprised by a sudden warmth. She looked around slowly, not with fear, but with confusion, as if discovering sensations she had long forgotten how to feel. Their eyes met. It was only an instant, but in that instant, the world seemed to exhale. The woman blinked, and a faint shimmer appeared at the center of her chest, a light, delicate and flickering, like the first candle flame against a long night. She stepped back, startled, pressing her hand to her heart. "What is this?" she whispered, though her voice was barely audible. Alara did not approach with force. She simply stood, allowing her own light to remain steady. The warmth from her heart stretched outward in gentle waves, not pulling, not pushing, only inviting. The woman's gaze softened. For a moment her eyes filled with tears, then cleared, as though a window had been wiped clean from the inside. "I remember this feeling," the woman murmured. "I don't know how, but I remember." Alara's own heartbeat quickened, not in fear, but in recognition. She took one quiet step forward, You are not imagining it, Alara said softly. The light you feel is yours. It has always been there. The woman's breath trembled. Around them, the square remained unchanged. Others walked by without noticing, eyes still downcast, hearts still hidden. Yet the air around the two of them seemed to come alive with possibility. The woman looked down at her hand, which now glowed faintly in the center of her palm. Why is this happening now? Alara's voice was warm, steady. Because your soul heard the call. The woman's eyes widened with wonder and grief all at once. Does that mean I was asleep? Alara nodded gently. As we all were, until something within us called us home. The woman's shoulders relaxed, as if a weight she had never known she was carrying began to lift. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply breathed, and as they did, the light within the woman's chest glowed more steadily. The air around them shimmered softly, like morning light breaking through fog. From the edge of the square, the elder watched. His eyes glimmered with the quiet knowing of one who had seen this moment across countless worlds. For this was not just a meeting. It was the beginning of remembrance spreading, heart to heart, light to light, one soul awakening another. For a moment, all was still. Alara and the young woman stood in quiet recognition, their heart lights gently pulsing in unison. Then, something subtle began to happen. So delicate, it could have been mistaken for a trick of the air. A breeze swept through the square. It was not cold nor warm, it was alive. As it passed through the space, the faintest glimmer of light stirred across the stones beneath their feet. Leaves high in ancient trees shivered, releasing tiny motes of golden dust that floated in spirals through the air. The sky, once dim and muted, rippled softly, as though remembering the idea of dawn. Alara felt it first, not with her mind, but with her heart. Her chest warmed, the gentle pulse of her heart fire sinking with something far beneath the surface of the land. The young woman gasped quietly, looking down at her palm, where the light glowed more brightly than before. Do you feel that? She whispered. Alara nodded. The realm is listening. All around them, the people continued their quiet movements, unaware of the shift. Yet, something had changed. A man walking by slowed his pace and looked toward the sky, confusion on his face, as if remembering a dream he couldn't quite hold on to. A child, previously slumped in silence, looked up at a tree and reached out, eyes wide in curiosity. For a brief instant, light flickered in the child's gaze, then faded once more. The elder appeared at the edge of the square, watching not only Alara, but the land itself. This realm, he said gently, has long held its breath. Every time a heart awakens, the realm exhales. And with each exhale, life begins to return. Alara looked down at the earth. Beneath the surface, she felt a tremor, not one of danger, but of recognition. It was as though the earth itself had remembered her, or perhaps remembered itself through her. The young woman stepped toward Alara, her voice no longer trembling. What happens now? Alara placed her hand over her heart. Now the echo spreads. The breeze returned, stronger now, carrying with it the soft hum of an ancient song. It flowed through the trees, across the stones, through every silent street. And though the people did not yet understand, something in them stirred. A woman dropped the object in her hand and pressed her palm to her chest, eyes widening in surprise. A man paused mid-step, turning his head as if hearing someone call his name from far away. The realm was not changing because Alara demanded it to. It was awakening because she remembered. The elder stepped forward, his voice a soft resonance. The world does not change through force, he said. It changes through frequency. And frequency shifts when one heart remembers its truth. Alara closed her eyes, breathing with the rhythm of the realm. She felt the awakening spreading, not like a blaze, but like dawn, gentle, inevitable, unstoppable. And as the first ray of unseen light moved across the sky, the realm itself began to breathe again. The air around Alara shimmered with quiet expectancy, as though the realm itself had turned its attention toward a single point of light. The breeze that had stirred now carried a soft melodic resonance, like the echo of a song not yet fully remembered. One by one, figures began to appear at the edges of the square. They did not rush forward. They did not call out. They simply stopped, as though their feet had reached the place their souls had been searching for. Each stood in silence, hand resting gently over their heart, eyes filled not with understanding, but with recognition. A young man stepped forward first, the faintest glow shimmering at the center of his chest. His light flickered with uncertainty, but it was present. Behind him, an older woman appeared, shoulders tense at first, then slowly relaxing as warmth began to rise through her body. Further back, a child appeared beside her, eyes wide with wonder, as though she had seen this moment in dreams. They formed no lines. They followed no instructions. Yet still they gathered, drawn not to Alara herself, but to the resonance awakening within them. The elder stood quietly at Ilara's side, watching the circle form. "Light does not demand attention," he said gently. "It invites remembrance." Alara's heart glowed brighter, warm and steady. She did not speak right away. Instead, she breathed slowly, allowing her heartbeat to align with the subtle pulse moving through the realm. As she did, the ground beneath them shimmered. Delicate threads of golden light emerged from the earth, flowing toward each person in the circle, not to bind them, but to connect them. Each thread pulsed softly, and with every pulse, the glow within their chests brightened, faint but unmistakable. The young woman who had first awakened stepped closer to Alara, tears softly shining in her eyes. "I thought I was alone," she murmured. Alara reached out, not to take her hand, but to stand beside her. "We were never alone," she said. "We were simply waiting to remember." A hush fell over the circle. The breeze paused. For a heartbeat, everything was still, suspended in sacred silence. Then from deep within the earth, a resonance rose. It was not sound, it was memory, and every heart in the circle felt it. The elder's eyes glowed softly. "This is the beginning," he said. "Not of following a path laid before you, but of becoming the path itself." Alara looked upon the awakened souls around her. None bowed, none asked her for answers. Instead, they stood with quiet strength, as equals, as sparks of the same eternal flame, ready to remember who they truly were. And beneath their feet, the realm began to stir, no longer asleep but gently waking. A stillness settled over the awakening circle, as though the realm itself had paused to witness what would unfold. The golden currents rising from the earth swirled gently around each person, not urging them, but listening. Two paths shimmered into view. One wound gently back toward the mirror realm, radiating calm and beauty. Its light was soft, soothing, beckoning like a warm embrace, promising safety and peace. It whispered of healing, sanctuary, rest. The other path stretched outward into the unknown. It flickered with faint strands of gold, but shadows moved across its edges, not threatening, but real. It was a path that would require courage, not to confront monsters, but to confront forgetfulness, fear, and sorrow in the hearts of those still asleep. Alara looked to the elder. He did not point, he did not instruct. His eyes held only truth. "This is the moment every awakened soul must face," he said quietly. "To hold the light is sacred, but there comes a time when the light must be shared, not as an answer, but as an invitation." Alara felt her heart pulse with radiant warmth. She looked at the circle of souls around her, the young woman, the child, the elder, the silent others whose light had begun to awaken. None were forced to decide. All were simply given the opportunity. She looked toward the comforting path. For a moment, the longing for peace tugged at her heart. After pain, struggle, and the burden of forgetting, the promise of rest was beautiful. But then she thought of those still walking with dimmed hearts in distant realms. She saw their silent suffering, not as despair, but as a calling, a quiet cry from souls that had forgotten their own brilliance. And in that moment, the light within her heart did not waver. It expanded, not in certainty, not in perfection, but in devotion. Ilara stepped toward the path of light that led outward. The young woman stepped beside her, then the older woman, then the child. One by one, others moved, not in fear, but in remembrance. Their lights shimmered brighter with each step, as though the path was being strengthened by their willingness to walk it. The breeze stirred once more, carrying the soft echo of the ancient song, now louder, clearer. The elder smiled, not with pride, but with peace. "You do not walk this path because you must," he said softly. "You walk because the light within you knows the way." Alara placed her hand over her heart. The warmth there was no longer just a flame. It was a pulse, steady, eternal, and with that, The first steps were taken. The realm trembled, not in fear but in awakening. The journey had truly begun. The golden mist parted slowly before them, revealing not an ending, but a beginning that stretched farther than any horizon Alara had ever known. The pathway of light, once faint and flickering, now glowed beneath their feet with a steady radiance, as though awakened by their choice to walk it. Every step sent a soft pulse through the land, like a heartbeat echoing across time. Alara lifted her gaze to the sky. The constellations were moving. Stars that once stood still now drifted into alignment, forming a great arc of light across the heavens. A celestial gateway opening, not outside of them, but because of them. The song that had whispered through the realm now rose in clarity. It was not a song sung to them, it was a song sung through them. Behind Alara, others followed, each with their own pace, their own rhythm, their own light. Some walked in silence, hands clasped over their hearts. Others wept softly, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming feeling of returning to something they had never truly left. The elder walked a short distance behind, his presence steady like a pillar of dawn. He did not lead, he did not follow. He simply walked with them, as all elders have always done, quietly holding the resonance of remembrance. As Alara stepped deeper onto the path, the land beneath them responded. Veins of golden light spread outward through the soil, racing across mountains, under oceans, into sleeping cities in distant realms. Wherever the light touched, a single heartbeat stirred, gentle, questioning, alive. "What is happening?" the young woman beside her whispered. Alara placed a hand over her heart. The answer came not as thought, but as knowing. The world is remembering us, because we remembered ourselves. Ahead, the path widened. The mist began to glow with radiant color, gold, rose, violet, blue, swirling like the birth of a dawn no eye had ever seen. The hum beneath their feet deepened, turning into a resonance that moved through the bones of every traveler. The elder's voice rose, soft, strong, eternal. "You have crossed the threshold. This is no longer the path of the seeker. This is the path of the remembering ones, the path of the elders in the becoming." Alara took a final breath of the air behind her, the air of the realm that had once been asleep. Then she stepped forward, into the realm that was waking, and as she did, the sky ignited with light, the first light of a new world. This has been Valkyrie. If this story spoke to you, leave a comment or a heart. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for stopping by.